Hello and welcome to another episode of the Opus Well Style podcast. My name is Iván Watanabe here with my partner, Evan Wohl. Evan, good morning. How are you?
Morning. I'm doing great. How are you and your internet?
We're having a little bit of technical difficulty over here, but hopefully we can fight it through.
Namaste.
Yeah, technology is wonderful when it works, but when it doesn't, it's it's brutal.
Yeah.
But very excited to have on a friend of the firm, client, and just wonderful person, Meg Priest. Meg, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you again, Iván. Nice to meet you, Evan.
You as well.
Thanks so much for being on. We were having a conversation recently, Meg and I, about her new business that she's recently started and founded, Plan for Divorce, and really just kind of came out of a need personally, and also kind of a pretty big gap in the marketplace. So I'm really excited for you to come on and talk a little bit more about the company and what you're up to and why you started it, and I think that there's definitely a need for the services out there. So we're psyched to have you on today.
I'm glad to be here and to talk about it. I'm really excited about this
Awesome,
and
awesome,
happy
awesome.
to
So
share the need.
why don't you just kind of tell the audience a little bit about you, just introduce yourself and kind of, how you got to the place of starting the company.
Sure. So, like I said, my name's Meg Priest, and I have been in the HR and recruiting field for over 20 years, and still doing that. And I started Plan for Divorce just last year, or actually early this year. And how I came about it was through a need of my own. It was a personal need there. Plan for Divorce is it's a resource providing women help with divorce, emotional, um, legal, financial preparation, um, so that they can have structure to this very chaotic time, and also ideally to save a lot of money. Um, if it's okay if I go on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
something I realized through my own divorce, which cost about $50,000, was that most of what I paid for was administrative work. Um, it was my lawyer explaining to me how to fill out a 29-page financial long form. I still filled it out. I still found the tax info, everything, but it's confusing because I've never seen a financial long form and didn't know what it was or what it was for. We probably spent 4 hours back and forth with this form. What's that? $400 an hour. That's a lot of money to
Hmm.
fill out a form.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I hadn't seen it. I didn't know it. It was just new. So things like that, I want to help people prepare so that if they are seeking legal counsel, they can spend their money on strategy, what's
Hmm.
really important, and also to share tips and information. Um, if someone says I'm getting divorced, you think, go get your lawyer right now. It turns out there's a lot of preparation that you could do to have a much calmer, less expensive experience throughout your divorce by taking some steps and measures prior to securing a lawyer and starting the process.
Right. It's funny because, through our conversations, and I've had many clients, having the same conversation with their about to be ex-spouse, and a lot of times it's not super contentious. It's not a legal court battle. It really is just kind of two people that no longer want to be married. And there's obviously some financial implications and some logistics that need to get figured out, but people don't really know how to navigate that. And you're right, it can be an expensive proposition if you can't get like 90% of the blocking and tackling done, through a service like yours. And I think that's why, when we were having the conversation, it just made so much sense that there's a need for this particular thing. Like it's not necessarily there to replace an attorney per se, but could really mitigate a lot of the cost and sort of frustration and just getting your house in order before you go through this like technical process
Yes,
in the event that it's okay.
that's exactly it. By no means replacing a lawyer, but organizing what you need without paying lawyer rates to do so that when you do walk in the door, you know the vocabulary. You know what these forms are. You have already organized your documents. You know what emotion is, and you can have your drafts, and you know what to expect, so that your time is valuably spent and not on admin.
What are the biggest mistakes that you see, or tips to handle them?
Well, I think kind of a mental personal tip might be announcing or sharing with your spouse your plan before preparation, um, because once somebody has that conversation, things don't go back to normal. It
Hmm.
might be harder to find who pays the bills, who has the accounts to their financial assets. So, how it might be harder to access them to be able to fill out your long form. Um, Things like that are pretty important. I think another thing is really understanding how much information you need to gather ahead of time. It's not always easy to gather all of the information. You need to know what you spent on electric, per week, and your budget, what you spend, and your time. Um, and that part is really significant. I feel like I was documenting and gathering everything, and like Yvonne said, I didn't have a contentious divorce um, at all. I had it was just so confusing and so time consuming that if you could approach it as in, this is a process and these are my steps. It's I need to do X, then come back. Okay, you've got your forms. Let's do Y. And you can do this. It is hard to get divorced and change your entire life. It is not hard to gather up your financial information if you're not in a panic and you are not rushing and feeling like you have to be very discreet. So it can break down so many steps into doable, non-overwhelming processes, and it can change even the cortisol that's going through your brain when you're frantically trying to find this stuff. It can change the experience.
If you don't mind me asking, how long did the whole process take for you? Because in the handful of experiences I have with clients, it always seems to last longer than they expected.
It sure did. And again, I'll
Hmm.
repeat, this wasn't a contentious one, so
Yeah.
I think it was fairly easy. And it took us a year and a half.
Mm.
It took us a year and a half.
What?
And
Why does it take so long?
a lot of it is because you spend, as I initiated it, spent all this time with the lawyer learning what to do, what to write, how to submit. So there's weeks of that process. And then he has weeks to gather his information, and that we get it all. And a lawyer may say, hey, I want you to get Meg's paychecks from work. What if she's not telling the truth? That takes forever to get, the summons, to have someone print out all the checks. It's administrative stuff that takes
Mm.
all the time. And then it takes a long time between court dates too. I'm fortunately not having contentious divorce. I'm not doing any emergency court hearings. But I mean, if you fill something out wrong in the paperwork or miss something, you've got to go back and start again, and you lose weeks. Um, so it's the gap between the court dates and the info gathering and responding. Nobody just sits down and knows everything right away. You think you may say, hello, spouse, we're amicably divorcing. Oh yeah, we know what we're going to do. We're going to share the kids. Everything's going to be great. And then you go in there and someone says, well, what's the summer schedule? Is it the same? Oh, we haven't talked about that.
Mm.
What about holidays? Who gets them for, Thanksgiving? And what if they want to go out of the country? And you become aware of all of these things you haven't talked about, and then you have to talk about them with your lawyer and then your ex's lawyer and come to an agreement. And it's more not knowing. You literally just going, oh, I didn't think about what we would do for Mother's Day, or
Hmm.
your family's in Florida. I know you like to travel. All of those little details um, that take a long time to iron out, mostly to figure out, you know, you could be hashing it out, obviously, with your ex, but just thinking of all the things you're supposed to ask and record that were just second nature. You never documented time with your kid before.
Hmm.
Takes a lot.
Yeah. And just sort of like even the experience of having that conversation in front of attorneys for the first time has got to be different than you going through a worksheet where it identifies those particular questions that you haven't thought about, gives you a patient moment to actually think about it, perhaps even have a conversation with your ex on, what that actually could look like, again, in a calm setting, not in an attorney's office where, the everybody's sort of nerves are probably high, I would imagine. And, it could blow up into something that it doesn't necessarily need to be given just the environment, right? So I think the preparation and the actual process of itself, it just makes so much more
Yeah,
sense if you're able to have those conversations in a calm fashion.
100%. And I think that is also a reason that helps. Once you've made that decision, maybe don't jump to a lawyer right away because you are on high alert, high emotion. It's hard to have these conversations and it's hard to separate and acknowledge there's emotional, then there's process. And this, so when I went, from my lawyer, where I should be seeking, how to fill out my forms right or what not, I was wanting emotional justification. Um, I
Hmm.
think that would probably be the right word, and that's not what your lawyer's for.
Hmm.
I wanted to talk about everything and explain, and that's expensive to do with your lawyer. I had a friend go through the same process, and her lawyer guided her and had said, "No, no, you don't want to talk about all this with me. Go home. Here's your notes." And right through, um, and she spent a lot less than I did on her divorce.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just given what I know about you and Chad, $50,000 seems like astronomical for what you're actually looking for, right? It's like, hey, we both are agreement. Here are the kind of finer points we
I
need to iron
know.
out. Let's just talk about logistics and get this done, and like not have to have this be, a thing, right? Like not have to have it be, in a whole process around it.
Insane. Because, yes, because Chad's a client too. And, we were both emailing and CCing everybody on
Mhm.
this. And everybody was pointing in the same direction. Um, if Chad and I could have, if I, hindsight, if we had invested the money we spent, both of us, on this
Hmm.
process, uh, we would have been so much better off. And I do also think sometimes in hindsight, you can get to that point. As far as a personal experience, we ended up going pro se because we ran out of money. And when we did, it, I think I said at first, I said, I don't have any more to spend on this. I'm going to go pro se. He said, okay, I will too. Once we realized that, um, even if you are working together to not spend $100,000 on a lawyer.
Hmm. That's a lot of money.
There's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
There's some other things too. Everybody has different circumstances. None of them are great getting a divorce,
Hmm.
of course. But perhaps somebody is a stay-at-home mom and has been for 3 years and doesn't have an income. It would be fantastic if that person could get prepared first, whether it's the job search or
Hmm.
fixing the resume or trying to secure what you could do regarding childcare. What if, I don't know how many people have this now, but what if all of the money is in one person's name and not the other? If these things, if you're not prepared before that, you could be out of money, have no job, primary caregiver of the kids, and you're already just way behind. Where if you could say, okay, how is this going to work? And maybe someone says, all right, I don't have a friend to stay with. Let's talk about a job. And you can strategize. And, excuse me, my recruiting experience of 20 years comes in is
Hmm.
it's hard to get a job right now. And it helps if somebody knows how to get your resume past AI
Hmm.
and how to market yourself and stuff. And all of these things, it might be 2 years, but if you can come in prepared like that, it's going to be a much smoother and doable experience.
So can you tell us a little bit about the company? Tell us a little bit about sort of what the services are. Clearly, the scope goes beyond just filling out this sort of financial document, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of additional layers that you're providing. So I'm curious to sort of hear
Yeah,
more about that.
absolutely. So there are a variety of services that can be mixed and matched a la carte or just consulting hours. But basically, the services provided range from asking the questions that you are going to have to figure out the answers to. What are you doing about summer vacation? Who's paying for camp? Um, you know, what about overnights if someone gets another partner? So many things that you don't think about when your marriage is ending. Uh,
Hmm.
so a lot of it is working and helping make some checklists, understanding situation, saying, okay, these are things you want to find out and think about. If a lot of these are amicable, go work it out and come back. And so that's a big part of it. Another part of it is saying, hey, all right, this is what emotion is for. And again, not a lawyer, but this is research knowledge. It's not for instance, telling your personal story, things like that. You can guide people about the vocabulary. When someone's saying you've got to serve them, you have a summons, you have a motion, telling people what that is.
Hmm.
Um, but also, excuse me, between my career and actually college, majoring in creative writing and English lit, um, how you write your stuff matters a lot. And when you are writing about your own private experience and thinking, what goes on this paper makes or breaks, if I have my house or my kids, you're going to get a little personal, and that's not ideal for these documentations. So it can help. I can review writing and say, hey, you know what? Remember, the point is to show you are the primary caregiver and there's stability here. You don't need to write those 15,000 things about something else. The judge isn't going to care. And to kind of bring people back to the, you know, process at hand and can read and edit and help so that they can come in with a pretty good affidavit, meaning pretty good, like it has what's supposed to be talked about. So you don't have to have someone else say, all right, we're going to edit all this. It's an editing, so you can come in with a solid draft, or else you're going to be writing 3 or 4 drafts and sending them back to your lawyer, and they're going to read them while you're sitting there because that's their job. Um, so a lot of it has to do with that. Also, this one's a little bit more on the mental psychological spot, email support or phone support. Um, it's such a hard experience, and you have questions and you want to talk about them. And who better to call than your lawyer when you're going to say, my spouse didn't pick up the kids. Will that help me in court? Um, if you talk to 15 minutes on the phone with the lawyer, that's $100 right there, where somebody can kind of talk you off the ledge. Um, so I had someone call me and share, I butt dialed my ex accidentally, and I said something negative about him while I was talking to somebody. They were frantic because they were in the middle of court stuff. And it it was really helpful to talk to this person, for 40 minutes to say the judge doesn't care that you butt dialed and said your ex is a jerk. Like it's not going to change anything. You don't need to call your lawyer. You know, just let's share the freak out here and do that. And that's where people spend a lot of money too.
Yeah. It's funny because you can imagine how something as benign as that could spiral into something totally different that may actually impact the outcome of your
Yeah.
divorce, right? Like you call the person back saying, "Hey, listen, I'm so sorry, blah blah blah," and just like engage in further conversation, and then the lawyers have to have another conversation, and not only does it increase the cost, but like it could just spiral into something that it doesn't have to be because emotions and tensions are just probably super high. So every level of communication, period missed in an email sounds like something totally different that didn't mean that. And, it's like I'm sure the stakes on every piece of communication are super high. So having somebody
Yeah.
in their corner to just like gut check and give somebody a good perspective, I think is incredibly valuable.
Because it's explosive. That's a
Mhm.
piece I didn't ever think about ahead of time, was how much your emotions are driving everything, and it is hard to. Everything is a monumentous, like you said, the period when the wrong spot. All of a sudden, you're spiraling about, they're going to take all my money and leave, and it has nothing to do with anything. Maybe someone put a number one in front of something that they didn't, because you are reading it with your emotions. And yeah, that is, there's, there's so much that can be calm. It was awful, frantic. And the lawyers they don't know you or your relationship. Um, and may right off the bat say, okay, change the locks, do this. I'm going, but why would I change the locks? This is the father of my kid, who is not a harmful person at all. Uh, Guess what? I changed the locks. Boy, did that blow up in my face.
I
Yeah,
bet.
I would imagine.
I bet.
You know, because I was sure that was the right thing to do. Had I had more time, that was not the right thing to do.
I mean, it's just the whole process is obviously just immensely emotional, right? How can it
We
not
didn't
be?
even lock our doors anyway.
Yeah.
It was stupid.
But just the act of doing that, right? You take the cat because again, I find most attorneys are going to take probably the most cautious approach, right? And the most cautious approach is probably a horrendous scenario where that move was the right one, but 90% of the time, maybe it's not the right one. And in this case, it could have made things significantly worse, and that delays, and then more conversations, and somebody digs their heels in on another point that didn't really matter to them, and it could spiral. I
It
totally see
was
that.
bad. I can't say exactly. It probably cost me $3,000 to have done that in back and forth stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and if I'd had a gut check, I knew there was no reason to do that, but I was high on emotions and adrenaline and panic because I had called the lawyer right away.
Mhm.
And I'm like, they must know. I mean, if your surgeon says something's going to be away,
Mhm.
you trust them. And if you can get that calming piece, that these are small steps, you can control so much more of it and see that it's not a high. It can often not be as big a deal as you think. And if you can get your mindset more so thinking about, is this worth paying the hourly fee? Or do you want to save your money for the really hard stuff with your lawyer? And it can go a long way. Is this a doable task that someone can do? And if you can answer these things and say, I feel like I shouldn't change the locks. There's something to that. It if to know you could say, hey, no, that's not a good idea. But it's hard to do that when you're just panicked and you've got this
Mhm.
lawyer with all this experience going, change the locks. And then all of a sudden you're going, crap, I have to change the lock. And you get caught up. I
Absolutely.
bring the calm to people. It is this is okay. We can do this, this piece, this piece. I can break things down for them and make them small steps. And as far as the services go, they might only need me for a small step. Maybe they're struggling with writing their affidavit and want a set of eyes where I can do that and review and just charge for a document to read. Or someone might want some lists or a check-in of, okay, this is all the next steps. Can we talk about what they are? So you can cater it. But I think the thing that is the best is that somebody doesn't have to come and say, Meg, I'm going to sign up for everything you've got. Oh, now I'm committed to this. Come talk about what you need. Let's do that service. And then, hey, if you need me again, call me in a month. Let me know what you're struggling with. You don't have to, like you said, divorce takes a long time.
Hmm.
You don't have to even figure out what you need from me. We can have a conversation for an hour of consulting, see what I can provide for you for lists and follow up, and then call me if you need me. So you can kind of use me where you need to as well, or you don't have to make this long-term commitment at all. Some parts are very easy, some parts are not. It depends on your situation.
Hmm.
Right. Well, Meg, as we kind of wrap up, are there any other things that you want the listening audience to kind of take away from the process, or something that that we haven't discussed yet that you really want to make sure that you hit home?
Yeah, absolutely. And the listening audience is specifically internal for your company, correct?
No, this is all our network and all of our, whoever else is
Okay.
listening.
Oh, perfect. So I guess two things um, would be a takeaway. One is there are 8 steps to every step you have to do. Um, take a breath, take your time. You don't have to do anything overnight. If there isn't danger, obviously, if it's tumultuous and someone's danger, this does not
Hmm.
count for that. You don't have to do anything overnight. When you get that call and you're at work and they're saying, Meg, I need your social, I need this right away. You don't. It's still going to take 2 weeks to get that document to somebody. Always know you can say, hey, I'm going to get back to you. Boy, I wish I'd said that a lot. And also for the audience, just this is a very doable thing. Let's separate the homework, prep work from the emotional work. Let someone who knows how to do or guide with these small things help. And it reduces the situation. Um, and prepare before you before you file for divorce. Know that there could be a year of prep work that will save you a year on the back end
Mm.
and be a lot more peaceful in doing
Hmm.
it.
Well, listen, thanks so much for the time. We really, really appreciate it. I know this will be super valuable for some folks listening. Where can they find out more about you? Where can they find out, if they want to inquire about your services, where can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So on my website, which is planfordivorce.com, and my Instagram actually is the divorce organizer, because that is what I became. Anybody who wants to connect with me and have a conversation to explore my services, that's free. And they can there's a button right on the site. If they want to do a conversation consult call to see if this is something that works for them. I also am adding free checklists and things like that to the site. I actually need to pick your brain for one that has to do with quadro prepping soon. So they can reach me through there. I have a Facebook page as well, but the website or Instagram is it. And yeah, I'd love to chat with anyone. Boy, I wish I wish I had known what I knew now.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And to you, the listening audience, thanks for tuning in. Please click subscribe below to be notified when we release our next episode.